Hello, I just received my copy of the Ardennes 94T game, a new game released by the Polish company Taktyka and Strategia. And let's take a closer look on this game. I think the subject is pretty interesting. There's not much of the 94T campaign games at all, and if there are any, most of these are focused on the Cyclecat operation or Dunkirk evacuation, but battle in the Ardennes itself is not that popular, which makes the game itself pretty interesting. I personally like to have more games about 94T campaign because I'm just interested in this subject. One of my best wargames ever is France 40 by GMT, and it's interesting because this game ends just when this game starts. It would be pretty cool to get a sequel for this game, or maybe add-on that allows units from this game to continue their operation through the France, making a Cyclecat and driving through the France. It would be quite a big game, I assume, but, well, some of us enjoy monster games. If you are interested in France 40 campaign, then this book might be pretty handy of you. It's Karl-Heinz Frieser, Legend of the Blitzkrieg, Western Campaign 1940. It was a book released some years ago. I have a Polish edition, of course, but it was released in German, English and some other languages, I guess. It is one of the best books I have read about this subject and about World War II itself, because an author is not only a historian, but he's also an officer of the German army, and he wrote this book as from his own interesting point of view. So I recommend it strongly for anyone who is interested in this particular campaign. But let's take a look at the game itself. The cover is pretty normal. Well, I guess I like such illustrations better than, for example, such covers with just the photos that we all know. Original illustration is always better. Well, that's my opinion, at last. Now, on the back of the game, of the board, we have description in the 4 languages, miniature of the board, and a part of the gameplay. What is pretty interesting and unusual is the box. This is a magnetic lid, like this. I don't think that many companies used such a way to lock the board, the box, but I think I like it. It's about 4th or 5th game of this company we released in this way. Now, what's inside? Counters. I have to move it. Counters are die cut, and as you may see, some of these fell down and are loose. Most of them are not. We may guess, if you like to have your counters being solidly made, but you have then to cut the corners to make them look better. These counters do not have to be clipped. They look pretty good when you remove them from this. They are also pretty thick, as you may see. We have Germans. These are Belgians. There are more Germans, German aircraft. And here we have more Belgians and some French units as well. There are different colors for these French units. I guess this is because they were in the different armies, I guess so. Yes, you can see this. Here we have a generals of the headquarters of the French army, and here is General Corps of the Ninth Army and General Hunziger of the Second French Army. There is also something that I like. These are French tanks. I have a soft spot for the French tanks at all. I like how they looked. I know that these tanks weren't as good as German or even British tanks at the 1940, but I have to say that I really like how these tanks looked because they were cool. I know there's probably no my favorite French tank in this game. It was FC2M3 because it was a monster tank with about 12 people crew, 5 or 6 turrets and blah blah blah. It was a huge tank made at the beginning of the 20s, and it was very very slow, and it was never used in any real combat because it was destroyed. About 12 was made of this, and all of them were destroyed in 1940 during the railway transport when German bombers found them. But I would love to get this tank in some game, maybe some crazy designer release Advanced Squad Leader module with these cool yet crazy tanks. So here we have also some markers. Oh, these are those counters that already fell down from the dice. Okay, let's move them back. And here we have more of the markers. These markers are to be cut. They are not die cut. You have to cut them and probably paste together if you like. It doesn't have to. Here are masking counters, and here are field fortifications. And now rulebook. Let's take the look at the rulebook itself. A game uses Great Battles 1939-1945 system, which is pretty easy, I guess. It's not a complicated system. It can be quite compared with this game because scale is kinda similar. Mechanics are different, but the level of complexity is similar. So these are games for pretty quick gameplay. You doesn't have to memorize thousands of rules, especially some small rules. I don't have anything about small rules. I am a big Advanced Squad Leader fan after all, so small rules are my world, but I think all of us like to play something easy, quick and fast someday. All in all, it would be hard to imagine this campaign played, for example, in battalion or company scale. This game uses, I see, mostly regiment and brigade scale, but there are some battalions here. As you may see, these are garrisons of the French fortresses, and they have battalion scale, but most of them has regiment or brigade. Now let's take at the rulebook. I have Polish edition of this rulebook because I am Polish player, but this game was released in English as well. So if you would order this game, you just have to ask about English rules. Here are rules themselves. You see this. There's not a big number of rules. There are 12 pages of rules themselves, and 3 pages of tables. Nothing hard to memorize or understand, I assume. And here we have scenarios. Ardennes 1940 is a historical scenario. This scenario shows how it happened So you have a big number of German armored divisions running through the Ardennes, and some Belgium and French, mostly Belgium, units trying to stop them, which would be extremely hard. Next we have Au Nord scenario. Au Nord scenario is a scenario that allows player to use French units that stationed there in this area next to the Ardennes, but weren't used in original history. In this scenario you can use it. You can use them. You can see if it was enough to stop Germans with these units, but you have to remember that if Allies lose these units, since some of these are best Allies units available in this front, it would be very hard to do anything else during this campaign. Finally, we have third scenario, Fortress de la Montagne. In this scenario, author assumed that Allies were aware of the German plans to attack through Ardennes and gathered some of their units there to prevent such an attack. Germans are trying to move through the Ardennes, but they met stiff resistance of the Belgian and French units. So, this would be probably the hardest scenario for a German player of all these three, because he will have to deal with best French units in this campaign. We have also a reinforcements table and combat table, along with some commercial of the other games of this same system. Finally, boards. Board is divided into two separate parts that can be joined together during the game. It covers whole Ardennes terrain. That probably most of you know, because there were dozens of games about Ardennes 1944, and most of the players, or wargame players, are pretty aware of the Ardennes area. I have to say that the board itself looks pretty good. I like the design, the graphics. It looks quite nice. Here we have eastern part of the board. As you can see, the terrain is raw. There is a lot of mountains, hills, forests, and you have to make your best way through the roads running west as quick as possible when you are playing Germans, I guess. Oh, we have some places that are quite famous in the 1944 campaign, like Bastogne, Malmedy or Liège. Terrain is raw itself, and here we have western part of the board. This terrain here we have rather clear terrain at last somewhere, because on the south we have more hills, more mountains, and even more forests. A central point of this part of the board is Namur, surrounded by the numerous forts. It's interesting that there is no Sedan on this board. Again, its board ends with Charleroi and Philippeville. Sedan is rather far more west. So I said like before, it would be cool to make another game that starts with breaking through at Sedan and using the same units from this game and the losses they suffered to see if it's possible to make Cyclecat, like the Germans did in the history. So that would be all when it comes to the boards. And that's everything. Yes, that's everything we have in this game. It's like I said, it's pretty easy game when it comes to the rulebook. I can't say much about the game, about scenarios, because I just received this game. I didn't play it. But one more thing. Let's take a look about the time of the scenarios. Scenario 1 takes 10 turns. Scenario 2 also 10 turns, and scenario 3 10 turns. So these are not very long scenarios. The longest scenarios I have seen in this system were 20, 25 turns long scenarios, so these 10 turn scenarios are not very long. I think the game itself would be quite brutal, because in the original historical scenario Belgian units were rather weak in the Ardennes, and French units couldn't help them much, because French commanders were not sure if this is important attack. They moved some cavalry units there, but they were unable to stop Germans, and so, as you know, French allies utterly failed in their attempts to stop Germans in the Ardennes. You can see if it's possible to do it better. Thanks to this two alternative history scenario, I think it's pretty good to have such scenarios in the games, because you can not only check historical events, but you may see what would happen if the commanders were better and if they give more units on the really important piece of front. So that would be all when it comes to the unboxing of this game. I think it could be pretty good game. I will play and made a review after I made some gameplays, because that's pretty important to see how it works. So that would be all for now. Thank you for watching.